Greetings, everybody. I just give a brief introduction to myself. I'm going to do a very brief part tonight, but Dr. Carrie James is going to be the primary speaker, our keynote tonight, and I think that you're going to really appreciate all of the information. I am the pastor at Fallston Church currently, and the Mission Central Parish, so 6 smaller congregations that work with us together in mission and ministry. I previously served as a DS, and I did a lot of teaching around the kinds of things that we're going to talk about tonight. I'm a board member with the Mid-Atlantic Foundation, and I coordinate the coaches. So I train coaches and assign coaches to all of the various educational opportunities of the foundation. And I'm one of the co-creators of the Financial Leadership Academy. So that's my part of this tonight. But I'll invite Carrie to get us going. Introduce yourself, Carrie, and take it away.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Frank and Annabelle. Thank everyone for taking time on a Wednesday evening to join us this evening. My name is Carrie James. I am a graduate of the Financial Leadership Academy, as well as a facilitator and a coach. And so I am grateful to be here and have this opportunity to share information with you during this pandemic, during this financial crisis that I know will be beneficial to you. I also serve in this region in the Greater Washington District at Jones Memorial United Methodist Church. And so I am grateful to be in my territory with my region and to present this information on this evening. And so let's prepare our hearts and our minds for this information. And so this evening, I want to talk about the financial impact for small churches. And all of us are feeling the impacts. And so in some cases, smaller churches are experiencing more of the impact that has come about due to the pandemic. The financial impact of COVID-19 is pervasive. A recent United Methodist Communications online survey on the impact of COVID-19 on churches findings are 76% of churches say church giving is down. 23% say giving is unchanged. 59% say finances are tight, but they can manage by reducing expenses. 26% say they expect to make significant changes. 34% say giving is down more than 40%. 15% say finances are not a concern. 52% say they offer electronic giving at their church. And as we just pause to glance at these statistics, we know that there is a major financial impact due to COVID-19 among churches of all sizes, but especially in particular to smaller churches, smaller congregations. And so as we take in those statistics, we want to talk a little bit about the Finance Committee, and then we want to look at some strategies to help you during this pandemic and offer some strategies during this impact that all of us are experiencing. Per Book of Discipline, the following persons are members of the Committee on Finance: the chairperson, the pastor or pastors, lay member to annual conference, church council chairperson, staff parish relations committee chairperson or representative, trustees chairperson or representative, stewardship chairperson, lay leader, financial secretary, treasurer, business administrator, and others determined by the church council. The officers should be held by two different non-related persons. And if any of these persons are paid staff, they serve without vote. What is the charge of the Finance Committee? Compile an annual budget, submit budget to Church Council for review and adoption, develop written financial policies and procedures, develop and implement plans to raise sufficient income, administer the funds according to instructions from Church Council, carry out the Church Council's directions in guiding the treasurer and financial secretary. I want to zoom in to the fourth bullet where it says, develop and implement plans to raise sufficient income. And during this financial impact, during this financial crisis that we find ourselves in, it is the task of not just the treasurer, not just the chairperson of the Committee on Finance, not just the financial secretary, but is the charge of this entire committee to develop and implement plans to raise sufficient income. And with this pandemic and with this crisis, we have to adjust our plans and we have to really analyze the budget perhaps more than we've had to done in recent memory. But again, it is the charge of this entire committee. And so some of the things that help us gauge our financial health at our church are financial reports. A balance sheet or a statement of financial position shows a snapshot of your church's financial health. What we own minus what we owe equal overall worth. Number two, income statement or statement of revenue and expense shows whether your church is receiving more than it's spending. Income minus expense equals net income. Number three, statement of functional expenses shows how much money you've spent. Breaks down each expense by fund and category. And then finally, the cash balance by fund shows income and expense tied to the fund, shows how much of the fund is available to spend. And so here are some of the church finance best practices that we see now, and even before the pandemic started. The first best practice is online giving. As we saw in the survey, many of the churches who were surveyed have online giving available for people to give at their church. Some churches didn't have it in place and they reimagined and they pivoted during the crisis, and now they offer online giving. And we'll talk more specifically about online giving later. But the whole practice of online giving is to give people more opportunities to give. Number two, thank you letters. Sometimes we take people's donations for granted and we don't tell them thank you. We don't let them know they're appreciated. And so one of the best practices is to write a thank you letter to each and every donor who gives a gift to the church. That can be done by the pastor, that can be done by the finance committee, but don't take any donation for granted. Send thank you letters to thank your donors for their generosity. Number three, narrative budgets. A narrative budget doesn't just show numbers, but it tells stories and it helps people to experience the ministry of the church and not just look at it as numbers on a piece of paper. Number four, stewardship sermons or studies. to help people understand what stewardship is through the worship experience, and also through small groups and through Bible studies and other studies about stewardship, so that people understand that we are not owners, but we are stewards, and all that we have belong to God. Number 5, quarterly statements. Around this time of year, churches send out their giving statements for the previous year, and people receive them in the next year. And so they can't adjust, they can't give more toward 2020 because the books have been closed on 2020. And so if you give out quarterly statements, it will let people know they're giving in a more contracted period of time. And so that is one of the best practices that we could do, send out quarterly statements. Some churches allow print-on-demand statements so that people are aware at any moment how much they are giving to their church. Number 6, offertory testimonials. Most of us are worshiping in a virtual space, online, live stream. Some of us include an offering, some of us don't. But if you aren't, you're missing an opportunity to share testimonials during the offertory. Share stories about what you're doing, even when the church building is closed. Share stories about how you're feeding the hungry, how you're clothing the naked, how ministry still is going on, even though the church building may be closed. Tell how your money is buying curriculum for young people and Sunday school groups and so forth. Again, help people understand that you're requesting money not just to keep the lights on, but you're requesting money for ministry and mission. Number 7, written policies and procedures that guide the financial process of the church. Sometimes these are in people's head, but we need to make sure that we have written policies and procedures that guide all of our fiscal practices at the local church. Number 8, rotate leaders often. Sometimes we have in smaller congregations less volunteers, and people tend to serve for longer periods of time. People tend to serve in various positions. And so one of the things that you want to do is to make sure that you rotate leaders often so that one person does maintain all of the knowledge and all of the experience in that one particular role or that one particular position. Number 9, impact stories. How are you making a difference during COVID-19? How are you making a difference during the pandemic? Share your impact stories on how you are using the donations and the generosity of members and friends to impact the world. We are called to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Are you sharing those impact stories? Are you sharing the amount of meals that you're serving during the week? Are you sharing all of the great ministry that you're doing, even in a virtual space when the building is closed? Number 10, legacy giving. Not only are people giving in their lifetime, but people can also leave a legacy gift to the church after they transition from life to eternal life. And so if you haven't started discussing legacy giving or you don't understand it, make sure you get more information about legacy giving. The Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation can help you in that area. But again, helping people leave a legacy to the church after they transition to their eternal home. Number 11, eternal controls. Making sure that you don't have one person counting the offering, the same person writing the checks, the same person depositing the money. You want to have internal controls in to make sure they have transparency and to make sure that you don't give one person an opportunity to do anything or even the appearance of anything with the church's finances. Number 12, financial literacy. Many times we ask people to give, but do we give them the tools that they need to do a personal budget? Do we give them the tools to understand finances? Do we give them the tools to increase their financial literacy so that they can give more to the church, so that they can be generous, so that they can give back to God what God has so generously given to them. Number 13, if we were worshiping inside the sanctuary, to have envelopes in the pews and also a pen next to the envelopes for people to write on them, or to write a check. And so just placing that information in the pews, giving people access that you can place your envelope in your check or your cash in the envelope and put your name on it or your envelope number on it, so that you will get credit for your donation. Number 14, capital campaigns. And capital campaigns are not just for building a church or renovating a church or getting a new roof. There are many ways that you can use a capital campaign. And so a lot of churches don't explore a capital campaign because they say, we're not building, our church is paid off, we don't have a mortgage, we're not doing any construction, we're not doing any renovation. And so therefore, a capital campaign doesn't apply to me. But that is not true. Number 15, accounting software. There are a lot of accounting software available to nonprofits, available to churches at a nominal cost, that will help you manage your church finances, to generate the reports that we talked about, the balance sheet and so forth. And so if you can't do it by hand and you don't have a bookkeeper, you can get accounting software that will help you keep the books, that will generate all the information that you need to have good financial practices at your church. It will help you manage donations, manage contributions, manage payroll, manage the taxes that you will have to pay, and so forth. And so a good accounting software can help you in that regard. And then finally, number 16, an audit team exchange. If you meet a certain threshold, you don't have to have a certified CPA to certify your financial records. You can do an audit team exchange, where one church will send 2 or 3 members from its finance committee over to another church to do their annual audit. And then that church will send members over to the other church to do their audit for them. And so again, it's done with volunteers. It doesn't cost. It's a set of fresh eyes to help look at the financial records of the church. And it is a process that works. And a lot of churches are doing that more and more as they want to keep the cost down, and they want to help each other and to collaborate. Why don't people give to the church? The number one reason why people don't give to the church is because church doesn't make giving easy. And so some churches only receive checks, only receive cash, only receive giving in the church, in person. Or if you know where to mail it, you can mail it in the church. And so again, if we want to get people to give, we need to make sure that we make giving easy, that giving is not a burden. You don't have to jump over a lot of hoops in order to give to the church. Number 2, church doesn't ask people to give. Many nonprofits ask constantly for donors to give to them. But a lot of times we as churches, we say, well, everything belongs to God and they know what they're supposed to give. And so therefore we don't have to ask, because it is between them and God. In smaller churches, a lot of people respond better when they know specifically what the need is of the church. When you make a personal appeal, when you talk to people and you let them know that due to this financial impact of COVID-19, we're behind in this category, we're behind in that category, and we need you, if you can, to help during this time. So we need to start asking people to give. Number 3, church doesn't tell why you should give. And so again, we don't ask to give and keep lights on, but we want to give so that we can make more disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. We give so that we can multiply our impact, so that we can transform our community, so that we can transform lives. That's why we want people to give, not just to pay the utilities or to keep the lights on in our buildings. Number 4, church doesn't make giving about the donor. Oftentimes we make giving about us. We need $1,000 to pay this. We need $25,000 for a new boiler. We need $30,000 for a new roof. Everything is about what the church needs instead of about the donor. What causes are attractive to the donor? What's their passion? What do they want to see happen in their church? So we need to shift from asking to meet our needs to how can the church meet the needs of the donor. And number 5, church doesn't thank donors for their gifts. And again, that's one of the best practices. We take for granted that we don't thank our donors or our givers for their contributions. Sending out an annual statement to show what people have given in the course of a year is not a thank you, but a thank you can be incorporated with that statement. And so again, we don't want to take our donors for granted. We want to say thank you. We want to say thank you often. And there are many ways that you can say thank you for their gifts, for their generosity. And one way you can do it is every Sunday during your offering to thank people for their generosity, to thank people for their gifts, to thank people for the resources for you to transform the world, for you to have an impact on your community and the people who live in your community. During this financial impact, we need to make sure that we are connecting more with our members than perhaps we ever have been. You need to connect with your members on the phone, connect with members through emails and text, connect with members through video conferencing, connect with members through social media and website. And also during this connection, you'll find out about them, who's unemployed, who's been laid off of their job, who has an illness, who is dealing with this, how are the children doing with online learning at school, how are parents adjusting to working from home and being a teacher at home. And so again, as we connect with our members during this pandemic, we can get an understanding of what they need and how we can respond to the needs that we hear by our constant contact and connection with our members. And then finally, connect your asking for money to your mission. Don't just ask for money just for the building upkeep, but connect the money that you're asking for to your mission, to your why of existing. 7 questions about church finances that we all should be asking, especially in this pandemic that we find ourselves in. Number 1, what we received. And so on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, we want to ask the question, what have we received? How much income have we received? Number 2, we want to ask, who gave it? Who gave us the income? Who gave us the contributions? Who were the generous donors who gave us the income that we received? Was it 5 people giving all of it? Was it 20% of the congregation giving 80% of the contributions? Who gave the income? Number 3, what is the intended use? Is it designated or undesignated? What did the donor have in mind when they gave this gift to the church? Number 4, what we spent. Are our expenses increasing or decreasing? What did we spend after we received the income? Again, this is something you should be monitoring weekly, monthly, quarterly to determine how much was spent. Number 5, not only what was spent, but where it went. Where did it go? Who do we pay? Number 6, what we have left. After your income has come in and you've paid your expenses, what do we have left? Do we have anything left? And if we don't have anything left, then what are we going to do? And that leads to number 7, how are we doing? Are we financially healthy? If we tighten our belts, will we get by? Or do we have to make drastic adjustments across the board in order for us to survive? And so these 7 questions, without having a lot of financial knowledge, will help you understand whether or not your church is healthy financially. What giving metrics can you use to determine the financial health of your congregation? Number 1, a giving unit. A giving unit is an individual, a couple, or family who gives to your church. Some churches do it based on an envelope number. They call each envelope a giving unit. There are various ways you can do a giving unit. Some churches do it by household. But again, whatever definition you come up with, just make sure you stick with it. Number 2, giving per unit. Donations divided by giving units equals average giving per giving unit. And so again, if you know how much your donations are, how much income you have received, and you know how many giving units you have, that will let you know the average giving per giving unit. Number 3, giving trends. Giving compared to a previous period. The second and third quarter of last year compared to 2019, or 2018 if you have those records, or even 2017. December of 2020 compared to December 2019. It allows you to determine the trends that are going on in your church. And again, with this pandemic and the church being closed for almost a year now, we know that this is an anomaly and this doesn't fit into the normal forecasting that a lot of churches do. And so therefore we have to do scenario planning, we have to do forecasting, we have to do other things based on the trends that we are seeing. Number 4, giving distribution. Your church's giving spread among your members. And so again, do you have 5 people giving all of the income to your church, or is it spread out to more people? And so if you look at the giving distribution and you have 5 people giving all of the money or most of the money, what happens if something happens to those 5 people? If they get laid off of their job due to COVID closures? God forbid if they pass, or if they move away to take another job so that they can take care of their family. How do you increase giving and giving units to offset 1 or 2 people giving most of the income at your church? And then number 5, giving and expenses. Your church's comparison of giving versus expenses. Again, this can be done on a monthly basis as income comes in and as expenses are paid. Monitor your giving and your expenses, and that will let you know if you're financially healthy. Don't wait until the end of the year and say, well, we're $100,000 behind when you could have made adjustments earlier in the year instead of waiting until the end of the year to make those adjustments. So again, monitor your giving, monitor your expenses, do those comparisons to let you know whether or not your church is financially healthy. And so what we need to be doing during this time, during this pandemic, during the financial impact, is assessing your church finances. So the questions that you want to ask are, did our income decrease last year? Did our income increase last year? Did our income remain the same last year? And as you go deeper, what expenses can we eliminate or reduce this year? In coaching some congregations, they normally had a landscaping company do their landscaping. But last year, they decided to have volunteers do the landscaping. And they were able to save $4,000 by making that simple adjustment. And the grass and the manicured lawn still looks good, but they didn't pay that expense to a landscaper. Volunteers from the church did it. There are many other ways that we can look at eliminating or reducing services and cost. The next question, what supplies or services can we eliminate or reduce this year? And so again, we are creatures of habit, but this year we may have to make some adjustments. And if staff is important to you, you don't want to cut staff, what are some other areas that you can eliminate or reduce? What are some supplies or services that you can eliminate and reduce? In coaching another congregation, they were spending about $4,000 a year for communion. And so now that worship is virtual and they're not having to pay for communion, everyone does it virtually in their own homes, they were able to reallocate that $4,000 to something else because they don't need it currently. And so you have to look at the budget and look at ways that you can eliminate and ways that you can reduce that won't have a major impact on your mission of making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. What are some of the ways you can increase your finances during this pandemic? Did your church apply for COVID-19 relief grants? Did your church apply for Paycheck Protection Program forgivable loan? And round 2 is opening now. And so if you haven't considered, maybe you should apply for round 2 as a way to increase your finances. Have you opened or applied for a line of credit with Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation? Have you offered your church as a food distribution center, where not only do you get the food to distribute to the community so that you can be the church and you can meet your mission and your ministry, but also in some cases you may receive income for the use of your facility in order to fulfill your mission and ministry of the church. Have you considered, like some churches, being an online learning center for children of essential workers? With online learning and some students not functioning well at home by themselves, have you considered safely opening your church as an online learning center for students to come during the school day and have snacks and lunch at your church while their essential worker parents are working and not able to be at home with them and to telework? And so these are just some options. There are many more options that you can consider when you think about increasing your church finances. And so again, reimagine, think out of the box on various ways that you can adjust your finances. So coming up next, we have Reverend Dr. Karen Walker with some additional insights on ways that you can increase your church finances.
Great, thanks, Carrie. So one of the things that I want to talk about tonight is the way to engage the community. And Annabelle's going to put up a couple of slides. If you put the first one up, called the Tenets of Community Engagement. So we're talking about finances, and you might ask the question, why are we talking about community engagement when we're talking about finances? But the goal of every church is growth of disciples, growth of the mission, the ministry, service. And it all begins with relationships and a relationship with the community. So trust me for a few minutes tonight, and I guarantee by the end, you'll see ways to increase the money that is given to your church for mission and ministry, but it's not going to be coming out of the pockets of your members. It's going to be coming from the community. All right. So first of all, we have to agree that your church is in your community because God called it to be there. It's in the church, it's in the community for the community. That community is your mission field, and you cannot be a church without a mission field. Ultimately, engaging the community increases the growth of your church, of your mission and ministry. So let's take a look at these tenets of community engagement. I'm going to give you some examples along the way. There's not a single example I'm going to give you that you cannot do yourself. So if you're saying, oh, well, that's just a big church thing, it is not. Every church, regardless of size, can do the very same things. So the first tenet is love your community more than your church building. You might think about some of the conflicts or conversations that the congregation has had over the years about the building and about how to decorate, etc. But we really do need to shift our focus to putting the people first. And so loving your community more. When people come into your building, do they feel welcomed? When a scout troop uses the building, do they get yelled at by the trustees for making a mess? Are they coming back? If you decide you want to save money and not turn up the heat in the evening when the AA groups meet for their meetings, are they going to come back? If we can imagine thinking about the groups that use our buildings as welcoming them into our home, we want them to feel like it's their home too, right? And that's the key. That is really what begins that kind of growth in your congregation. So you have people that come into your building for, say, AA groups, NA groups, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. What if they saw pictures of themselves, maybe not the AA groups, but certainly the scout troops, hanging on the walls? Those canvas prints that you can get for $25 a piece. They're only 25 for, I think it's a 10 by 14, but of activities going on so that when those people walk into your building for their particular group event, they feel like it's home. If there are people that use your building, say for instance, for Boy Scouts, and they don't have a connection to a church. And by the way, remember 30% of the community is churched, 70% not so much. They're either unchurched, non-churched, or not really connected at that point in time, 70%. So you got some families coming in, they're sitting down, they're waiting for their kids to finish with Scouts, and they're looking around and they're seeing canvas prints of their kids' scout troop. What are they gonna do when they need a funeral, when they need a baptism, when they need a marriage? They're gonna say, well, I don't really have a church, but actually I do. The one that feels most home to me is the one where I have my picture hanging up. So radical hospitality, helping the folks that use our buildings to feel like this is home. We want them to feel at home when they're in our building. If you have a community association somewhere nearby, they're always looking for space to meet that's free. Why not invite them in and serve them coffee? Why not show radical hospitality and just make sure that they feel like it's home? So number 2 is give up being all things to all people. Focus on what you do well and do more of it. For those of you familiar with the concept, it's called appreciative inquiry. And it's really pretty simple. There are no mega churches in the Baltimore, Washington Annual Conference that are United Methodist. So not any one of our churches can be all things to all people, but there are some things that we can do really well. So I wonder if you might ask yourself, what are 3 things that your congregation does well? It may be ministry to seniors. Whatever it is that you do well, you do more of that. If your average age in your congregation is 70, chances are you're not going to want to go out and hire a full-time youth pastor. It's just, it doesn't make sense. But what if you spent some time in reflection thinking about what can we do to minister to seniors in our area? What's our niche? What is it that we can do well? Can we have a quilting group here? Can we have a senior health and wellness fair here? What can we do to target a portion of our community that we can really do ministry well for them? 3 is lead spiritually. It's what we do best. I mean, nobody else in the community can do it better than us, right? It's what we have that is unique. So we have a chance to lead, especially now in times like this COVID. How can you share your spiritual side out in your neighborhood? For example, anybody, if I say the Burma shave signs, maybe you know what I'm talking about, those little signs along the way. So we've done that. You buy 4 of them. They only cost $100 for 4 of them. Here were a couple of ours that we had in there. So as they drove by, they would see these signs, hang in there. Jesus loves you. Breathe in the Spirit. Kangaroo crossing. We threw that one in just for a laugh to see if anybody was paying attention. We had a couple of different series, but man, people love them. We get all these anonymous notes from the community via our website. Thanks so much for the signs. Simple. We always include God loves you, wise men and women. They love that one. One said wise men, the next one said, and women, still seek him. You can really make your community smile and notice that you're there simply by the Burma shave signs. 4, relationships matter. You can think of all of the fundraisers that you've done. Maybe you do a ham and oyster dinner or a bazaar, those kinds of things. And they're really great events. They invite the community to come onto your property. But they really are one and dones. You're not building relationships with those simple fundraisers in general. But if we talk to people in the community and we continue to extend hospitality, we become the be nice and friendly church. What if you add a few things that we do well, right? Lead spiritually. What if you added a prayer booth to your bazaar? So think about ways that in all of the community events that you support, that you sponsor, there are ways that you can do what is uniquely yours, which is leading spiritually, beginning to build relationships. And I'm going to come back to that one in just a minute. The 5th one is partnerships promote growth and connection. So who can you partner with? This is a really important one. This is so simple, people. You gotta listen. Restaurants, schools, the post office, hospitals, CVS, Walgreens, virtually any business or organization in the community you can partner with. For example, there's a restaurant in our community. We work with them, especially now. This will be a great thing to do with restaurants in your community. We have a deal that on Sunday afternoons between the hours of 11 and 2 o'clock, if you take a bulletin from the church, they will take 5% of what you spend at that restaurant and give it back to the church for the building fund. It's a partnership that we have with Foston Seafood, it's called. So every person that brings their bulletin in, they know that they're contributing to our building fund because that restaurant is gonna give back to the church. CVS, they're always looking for places to do flu shots. What if if you really want to target seniors, offer flu shots at your church. And not only that, offer hospitality with it. Not just a flu shot, but come, have coffee, sit a while, have an orange or whatever you need to recover from getting the flu shot, right? So it's an opportunity, again, to do more than the one and done. It's building a relationship. Schools. So, everybody says, well, how can we create a partnership with a school? Here's what I know, that the Title I schools are required to have community partners. And so if you look around and there are Title I schools nearby, that's an easy take. there are schools that all schools have needs, all families that are in need. And so what we do is often collect the gift cards. I walk into the school especially when there's a new principal, and I say, I have a gift for you. So I'm not going in asking for something, I'm going in to give something. And I say, here are gift cards for, we usually do DSW shoes. We know that you have students here who on the first day of school don't have decent shoes to wear, that they've outgrown their shoes. And so we would like to give you these gift cards as a gift from the church, saying thank you for all you do, and so that you can help the needy kids in your school. And they're like, what? This is fantastic. It's a start. And then we continue to build on that relationship. We've been working on that relationship in our community for a long time. And so this past year, when a family, they found out a family that had kids in the middle school, the high school, and the elementary school. They were living in a car, and attached to it was a tent. They didn't know what to do, so they called me. Isn't that kind of cool that they called the church to figure out what to do? And so that's the integration of the church with the community. We can all do that. Number 6, use your building grounds mission for engaging. Walk through that building. Who can use it? Who would be really a great fit? Doggy daycare, AA, NA, scout troops. We have a beekeepers group that meets here, and I met with them the first night they were here just to say, welcome, we're so glad you're here. And then I said, but please, we ask you not to bring your pets in the building. You know, their pets were bees. That was crazy. But we also do doggy daycare on occasion, adult daycare, a rec space. Can you put a field on your grounds? Can you put a backstop? All of the rec centers are looking for more space. Can your parking lot be used for a nearby business that helps people? Can you give free spaces for charity? So how can we use our building, our grounds to engage the community? 7, be passionate about something. You know, you got to claim your space, claim your mission. What's an issue in your community? What are people in your congregation interested in? And, you know, what can they be kind of look around and see that they do something that makes an immediate impact. People want to make a difference. And the quicker they can do that and the more immediate they see the results, the more likely they are to grow in their passion for something. And finally, and this one is, all of those were leading up now to this one, the community connection. If you give the community something, then you want to ask for something in return. So we know that the one and done events don't grow relationships, but the ongoing kind of process of being out in the community, all of the things that I've already talked about, you know, you begin to do a little bit of every one of those, and pretty soon you become the church in the community. We, on occasion, did a few things. I just want to give you a few examples. We offered free coffee. On Fridays were free coffee. Once a month, we would put signs out, stop here for coffee. And everybody was talking about it. Not a whole lot of people stopped for coffee, but everybody, I was all over Facebook. Hey, there's a church providing free coffee. Why go to Starbucks? And so it was the talk of the town. Not a lot of people stopped. Again, I got to say that. But the point was, it got our name out there. Everybody wanted to know, where was the church offering free coffee? Another thing is, there are a number of places around, including First Fruits Farm. I know they go as far as DC in distribution of food. They will give away potatoes, corn, different crops. And so we always get, for example, potato drop. We will get 2,000 pounds of potatoes and put them in different bags. And then we put it out there so that anyone driving by, we say free potatoes. And we offer free potatoes to anyone who wants to stop and pick up a bag of potatoes. But a week later, we put on our sign and we put a bin outside saying, we are collecting coats for needy people in our family. So we give something away, we are in a position then to ask the community for something in return. It's amazing how that works. So it's a constant way of building relationship along the way. And so now when we put our bin out for our coats, we get about 10 coats a day for about 8 weeks. People just drop their coats off and then we distribute it to the homeless. So those are the tenets of community engagement. And a couple of them cost a few dollars. So let me show you now how 10 simple acts that can increase giving. You can implement these 10 things within a week to increase the giving in your church. Probably sounds better, too good to believe, but hear it for a second. So one, you got to make giving easier, and Carrie already said something about that. So you can't just wait for checks to come in. You got to give them opportunities. Electronic giving. You can show a QR code in your Zoom worship or your online worship. You can put that on the screen every week. All they have to do is scan it and it can go directly to your website. Anybody can create a QR code. It's not hard at all. If you have pencils in your pews, raise your hands. If you have pencils in your pews, I'm sure there are a few of you out there I can't see that raised your hands. You got to switch to pens. Buy some skinny pens with the church's name on it. It's okay. You can spend a few dollars on that, right? You buy pens, people write checks, they take the pen. And you might say, they took our pens. You want them to. And then you just refill the pen spot, right? Because they take those pens and they use them in the community. And back in November, I was at the Walgreens and they still had the thing where I was signing my name on the Visa card thing. And they gave me a pen to use. And by golly, it was one of my Boston United Methodist Church pens. So, hey, it's a great way to get your name out there. So you want them to take the pens. You want people to see the pens. And then a button on your website. Hey, if you push this button, it goes to the giving page where you have options of ways to give. Secondly, to reimagine. So some of this will overlap a little bit about what Carrie said. See giving is an opportunity. Let folks choose by always offering several chances to give. So people like to have choices, right? You don't want to have too many choices because you don't want to have lots of money going to something that isn't necessary. But a building fund, general fund, maybe 2 missions each month. Somebody once said to me, well, why don't we just stick on to one mission and then get more money for that? People might feel bad if they can only give a little bit to one or a little bit to the other. And I said, well, no, some people are passionate about one thing. Others might be passionate about another. So you're giving. You want to see giving as an opportunity. Third, this is a simple thing you can do. We used to only do this at Christmas. Now we do it year round. Angel gifts. Maybe there's someone in your life that you have a really hard time buying a gift for. Someone that you just, has everything, that you can't think of anything that they might need. Why not give a gift to a mission in honor of that person? So we always have a list of things that are available for people to give an angel gift for. Nights of shelter, so putting a family up in a hotel for a night, $75. Vacation Bible school, like the whole cost of the package. We provide it free, and we provide meals every night for families, $3,000. Grocery gifts. So you see there's different levels. Grocery gift card for $25. So it can be, any amount. And you want to give people a variety. I also always include a big ticket item. You never know when there's somebody that really is interested in providing a significant gift to the church, or even a legacy gift. So we will provide an opportunity for people to give a gift to our endowment, and we explain what an endowment is, how they will establish a legacy in their name for future generations. Or I will give them something tangible. During COVID, we needed, everybody is trying to buy technology, right? So 3 cameras in our sanctuary cost $17,000. And I put it out there, and do you know somebody who wanted to contribute? It wasn't a regular attender either. So you just never know who really wants to make an impact and connect with God. And remember, our giving is a spiritual thing. It's about our relationship with God. That's our motivation for giving, not because the church needs something. And so you want to help people work on that relationship with God, and giving them those kinds of opportunities to give makes a difference. Partnership with a restaurant. I talked to you, I already suggested that 5% goes to the building fund. It's a great way to bring money back into the life of the church. Kerry mentioned he didn't call it this. We call it this every week in our bulletin. Right before we collect the offering, I say this: thank you so much for your generosity. Let me tell you what happened here at the church this week. And I'll put a slide up, or there'll be a video testimony, but I'll say, look, we collected over $12,000 worth of groceries for 85 families in the last 2 weeks. And I just want to say how proud I am to be your pastor. Your generosity is overwhelming, and I am grateful. The ushers are coming forward to receive our tithes and offering, or right now, since it's all online, we say, here's the QR code if you want to connect, or you go to our website if you would like to give to the mission and ministry of the church. It's that simple. Amazon Smile. Anybody know Amazon Smile? Another time when you're going to raise your hand. So you can designate your church as the place where people can donate every time they use their Amazon account. It's really easy. And I bet someone in your church knows how to do that. Same with gift cards. You can establish a program where the church gets a portion of every gift card purchased through the church back as a rebate. So it's another way to raise a little bit of money. Always ask if there's a discount because you're a church. You never know. Walmart will often give a discount. Klein's, food stores, restaurants. The Texas Roadhouse, you might have one of those in your community. They give away for free every year to organizations those wonderful, delicious dinner rolls. And one morning we bought we asked for 400. They provided them, and we warmed them up in our ovens on a Sunday morning. Oh my gosh, it wafted through the whole church. People loved it. It serves Texas Roadhouse purpose. Everybody wanted to know where those rolls came from, and we gave them credit. But those are the kinds of things that, once you are aware of what's in your community, can really begin and create partnerships. They will provide food for Vacation Bible School too. That's one of their favorite projects. They have even little packets that they give with pictures and crayons for Vacation Bible School. And then two more, actually three that all relate to asking about money. Again, remember, money is really about a relationship between the giver and God. And one of the things that we have found is that when we ask people if we need to raise money, say $10,000 for a new boiler, and I will go and ask a giver if they would be willing to offer $5,000 and invite the congregation to attempt to match that. And it's amazing how many times people are honored when you ask them if to put up an initial amount that can be matched by other members of the congregation. So you have to know your congregation a little bit, who might be inclined to do that. Maybe that's even something you talk with your finance team about, or your church council team about. But people are honored to be asked to put up the match. Planned giving process, when you think about the last will and testament, a will, asking somebody to give to the church is a tough thing unless you put numbers around it. if you say, okay, we know that most people are going to divide their estate among their children, but what if they set aside 10% for the church? It's a tithe. It's a really easy thing to do in the will. And when you talk about it that way, when you talk about it as being a tithe, oftentimes people are very willing to do it. And then 10, ask, not be afraid to ask people, to tell people what the needs are and what the vision is for the mission and ministry. People will give to a mission. They will give to the vision if they believe in the mission. So inviting people to walk with you, to be passionate with you about what your vision and mission is, and then invite them to be a part of it. Ask them to take a risk. If you need to hire a staff person, what would it take for somebody to put up the money for the first year just to see how you could grow your church with that additional staff member? And it's amazing what people are willing to do and try and feel like they're blessing the church and making an impact with their money. So there, I did it in 20, Carrie.
Great job, Karen. Great job. Thank you for sharing all of that great information. And even during this pandemic, we need to have community engagement. And so the church exists in the community to be the beacon of light in the community. And so therefore we need to partner with the community and organizations in the community and collaborate, and also small things that we can do, small adjustments that we can make can lead to increasing our income in the life of our church. So now I'm going to shift a little bit, talk about giving methods. The typical giving method that most churches use is you can mail in your giving, your envelope, or the offering plate. And with most of our congregations, the sanctuary being closed and we're not worshiping in person or even outdoors, the offering plate kind of disappeared. And so when you only have two methods for giving, the mail or offering plate, one of them is virtually eliminated, and that leaves the mail. And so again, we want to make sure that we're giving easier. One of the reasons why people don't give to the church is because it's not easy to give to the church. So if these are your two giving methods, then you need to expand how you allow people to give to your church. And there isn't anything wrong with the mail. Many people are faithful at mailing in their offering, their tithes, and they do it faithfully, and that is great, and we appreciate that. Some people believe that because the building is closed, that they can no longer mail in their tithe, their offerings, their contributions. And so you need to make sure that through your communication, you let people know how they can give, where they can mail their gift if they are mailing it in, and what methods you are allowing them to give during this pandemic. Some churches are allowing a drive-in system where you drive in and drop off your tithes and your offerings at the church, certain hours, certain days. Some people are going to various homes and they let them know when they're there. They leave it on the doorknob and they pick them up. And so there are a lot of creative ways that you can use the mail, or you can use drive-ins or pickups and all of those types of things of your contributions. But again, that requires some effort. And as long as people are willing to make the effort, great. But we also want to make sure that we're making it easier and not difficult for people to give. So how do we expand giving methods? With this example, you see there that there are 5 ways to give to the church. You can continue to give in person, dropping off, appropriate times, appropriate address, so forth. You can mail in your gifts. Address is listed. Make sure they know exactly where to mail the gift. You can give online. You can give using a mobile app. And you can also give using text to give. And so again, as we expand giving methods, this makes it easier for people to give. And also they have options. Some people are only going to give in person or only give in the mail, and that is fine. Some people prefer to give online. Some people prefer to use a mobile app, their phones. Some people prefer text to give. And so again, we just want to make sure that we expand the giving methods so that people have options when they want to give to the church. But some of these options have fees associated with them. Some of these options have setup costs associated with them. Some of these options have monthly fees associated with them. Some of these options are more secure than other options. And so as you're exploring ways to expand your giving methods, make sure you ask the right questions and you do research as to what is best for your church. And so here's a giving platform comparison, looking at some of the most used apps for smaller churches. The first one is Cash App. And you see that Cash App is free. The transaction fee per transaction is 1.5%. It's a mobile platform. It doesn't offer cover the fee option. It doesn't allow for recurring payments. Givelify is free. The transaction fee is 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. There's an online and mobile platform. They don't offer cover the fee, where the giver pays the fee instead of the church paying those fees. But you can set up recurring payments. PayPal is free, 2.2% plus 30 cents per transaction. Online platform, cover the fee option? No. Recurring payments? Yes. Tithely, free, 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction fee. Online and mobile platform, cover fee option? Yes. Recurring payment? Yes. And then finally, Vanco, $20 monthly fee, 2.65% plus 38 cents transaction fee. Online and mobile platform, cover fee option? Yes. Recurring payment? Yes. And with Vanco, there is a discount for United Methodist churches. They waived the setup fee, and last year they were waiving the entire annual fee for an entire year based on a certain platform that you got from them. And if you got one of their premium platforms, then they would waive the monthly fee for 3 months. And so again, these are some of the giving platforms that a lot of our churches are using. There are many, many more. Whichever one you want to start using, make sure you research, make sure you explore it. But I always tell people that as you look at these giving platforms, a lot of churches send out envelopes, pre-postage or prepaid for their members to mail back in contributions. And so if you're doing that several times a year or every month, then you are incurring some cost in order to get people to donate, even in the mail. And so those costs, if you're sending it out and you're putting in a stamp, you know, $1 or $2 or $3 per giver per month, if you're doing it. So you are incurring some fees, some costs in order to make it easier for them to give. So just because you see some of these percentage transaction fees and some of the fees associated with the transaction, just know that you are paying some fees if you are doing just postage. And so these are easier ways for people to give, and some allow the option for the donor to pay that fee, so you get 100% of their donation. Going to shift a little bit to church budgets and look at one of the best practices of a narrative budget as well. And so the 5 goals of church budgets: make it clear. Budgets should be clear enough that church members can understand them. Make it correct. Budgets should contain accurate information. Make it complete. Budget should cover every facet of the church's stewardship. Make it concise. Budget should avoid clutter and be organized logically, making it easier to work with. Make it compelling. Budget should include compelling reasons for spending, saving, or receiving. Use a ministry-based budget that shows ministry, not money, not simply add percentages. The purpose of budgets. Budgets are tools to accomplish what God has called your congregation to do. And so at the end of the day, budgets are just a tool. Budgets show the allocation of resources. Budgets are used to authorize action. Budgets provide boundaries and benchmarks. Budgets show what each ministry will accomplish. Finally, budgets are tools that help financial leaders. Even though budgets are tools, budgets have limitations. Budgets do not motivate the majority of people to give. Just because you compile an annual budget doesn't motivate people to give. Budgets rarely communicate because some people do not understand budgets. Budgets do not reveal why people give. People don't give just because your church has an annual budget. People give to a cause, people give to vision, people give to mission, not just a piece of paper for an annual budget. Budgets can lead to inflexibility in decision making. And so sometimes if an organization is not doing ministry, but they have money allocated to them in the budget, the church will continue to allow them to hold on to those funds or use those funds, even though ministry is not being done. And so it leads to flexibility. Instead of giving some of those resources to a thriving ministry, that money stays with that organization that isn't really using it and not really doing ministry. And so again, it can lead to inflexibility. What are the budget types? The first budget type is a zero-based budget, which annually reduces the budget to zero, making it necessary for every department to evaluate and to justify all financial needs for the coming year. The second type of budget that most churches use is a line item budget, where it retains line item expenditures from year to year, making modifications as needs increase or decrease. It eliminates the need for detailed analysis. Next, program budget. Costs are identified with the specific programs being carried out by the church. This approach forces the church to do planning before preparing the budget. And then finally, a narrative budget, where it focuses less on financial numbers and more on what the income accomplishes and gives people an opportunity to experience the mission and the ministry achieved. A narrative budget communicates to the congregation how the church accomplishes its mission. It communicates through narrative, not numbers, to the congregation how you are changing lives through their monetary gifts. It attaches a living witness to your monetary resource. It points you to the future of the coming year by attaching vision to the budget. How do you create a narrative budget? You will need a line item budget, so the line item budget doesn't go away. That is your starting point. You'll need an Excel spreadsheet or some type of spreadsheet software. You'll need a Word document or a document editor. And then number 4, you'll need creative stories. And sometimes the fourth one is the hardest part for churches to come up with, the creative stories about the impact that they're having in their community. So the first thing you want to do is select ministry categories. In this example, worship, evangelism, discipleship, fellowship, ministry. And then you want to assign percentage columns. Create a column for each category, format cells as percentages, distribute operational costs by percentage of time across categories, and distribute percentage of line items into category columns. And so in this example, pastoral ministry percentage, 30% of time and is spent on worship, 20% on discipleship, 20% on evangelism, 20% on ministry, and 10% on fellowship. And so here you see examples of expenses from the line item budget. The copier cost $1,150, $4,250 for snow removal. The pastor's salary is $72,500. Administrative staff salary is $11,310. And so based on these expenses, the dollar amounts, you look at your categories: worship, education, congregational care, missions, and fellowship, and you adjust the percentage of time to the dollar amount. And so, for example, 50% of the copier is being used for bulletins and newsletters for worship. 10% of the copier use is for education. 10% congregational care, copying things that go out to the congregation for congregational care. 20% on missions, and 10% on fellowship and flyers and so forth. In this example, you see the pastor's salary, 30% is in worship, 15% education, 25% congregational care, 15% missions, and 15% fellowship. And so one of the ways to determine how to allocate the time is you can track your time for a period, a week or a month, or however long it takes you to track your time for using these various items. And then you adjust the time of a usage to that category and you spread out that dollar amount. And so if you go to the bottom of worship, we can say that 39% budget is for worship. 14% is for education. 12% is for congregational care. 20% is missions. 15% is for fellowship. And another way to look at this is for worship, 39 cents out of every dollar goes toward worship in our church. 14% of every dollar goes to education in our church. And so here's an example of a church and their narrative budget compared to their line item budget. And you see their total income is $203,000. On their line item budget, their expenses, $202,000. And so in worship ministry, 35% of their budget goes toward worship ministry, or $67,000, or rounding up to $68,000. And they have a picture of worship. They have a description of worship. Learning ministry, 26%, or $52,000, with pictures and with a detail of what learning ministry is. Caring ministry, 17%, with a description and a picture of a caring ministry event. And then reaching out ministry, 24%, with the picture of reaching out event they have, or $49,000. So again, with the narrative budget, it helps people to experience your ministry and not just look at lines on a piece of paper and numbers on a piece of paper, but it shows picture and stories and narrative to help people understand and experience your budget and your ministry, as opposed to just looking at dollars and lines. And so at this time, we'll take questions. I saw a couple come through the chat. And so I'm sure there are some other questions, right, Frank?
Yep, Annabelle, would you? I know we got a few, and I know JW and certain people have been answering throughout, but let's go ahead and ask the questions. I know there's several, and go ahead, Annabelle.
Sure. A couple of people asked, do you have any recommendations or suggestions for accounting software that small churches can use?
One of the software that they can use is QuickBooks, the nonprofit version, and there are some great deals on QuickBooks where they're allowing their churches to get them for $50 for a year. And so that is, one software that a lot of small churches can use for their accounting software. Servant Keeper is another software in terms of membership and contributions and things of that nature. Fellowship One is another one that they could use, as well. And so there are a large list that they can use for. Shelby provides, information or software that they can use as well. And so it just depends on how much they want to pay to manage that. Some are as little as $5 per month, and some are much more expensive than $5 a month.
Great, thanks. Quick question, is giving stocks to the church considered legacy giving?
It can be. And it just depends on somebody's assets and their estate plan. But certainly they can give stocks to the church in their lifetime, and it doesn't have to be as a part of their will or a legacy gift.
Stocks
Great.
are a great way to give too, because there's a great tax break in that.
Right, exactly.
There are a couple ways people can give to the church in ways that really help them out tax-wise. So it's great to go to the Mid-Atlantic Foundation website, and there's a whole list of ways to give to the church while at the same time giving yourself a really great tax break. So yeah, I highly recommend that folks do that.
Yeah, and if I can jump in, so a lot of times people won't sell stocks or whatever because of the tax consequences, but working with your tax advisor, a lot of times that is a very beneficial way to give to the church. And some people will stack up their giving. And like every year I clear out all my old little stocks that I've had for years and run them through the Mid-Atlantic Foundation and give them to my church. So it's for churches that have an account with us, we're happy to do that for no charge. So yeah, it's a great way. Good question.
Great. Also, could you bring some clarity around who in the church should have access to who is making the donations to the church?
The financial secretary and the pastor should have access to the giving records or the giving statement of the members, and so it shouldn't be something that everybody has access to. But again, this is something the pastor does have access to, and some churches refuse to give pastors access to it. It's not something that requires a vote. It's not something that you have to take to the church council, but the pastor is one of the persons who has access and should have access to the giving records.
Great. That's all the questions that we have written right now.
May I just share some my thoughts on who has access to the individual giving in the church? Some of you may remember, I guess it's about 25 years ago or so, the whole annual conference voted and approved that all the pastors should have access to the individual financial giving. It is not optional. It is a legislation that we approve at the annual conference. Even though I understand that there are a lot of, not a lot, but some churches have a very negative impression on that, because a lot of people think that giving is a matter between you and God. However, pastor needs to have the access, not because pastor wants to be a nosy, but it's because it gives a good pastoral the value, should I say, because if the giving of a person, a member, is suddenly decreased, and there's something happening, either they are mad at the pastor, mad at the church, or they lost their job and things like that. So pastor can do a whole lot more effective ministry through those information, and pastor has no interest in knowing how much who gives. It is just more of a pattern of giving, and that has a lot of information, beneficial information to the pastor. So that's why. Okay, thank you.
And it is in the Book of Discipline. That was put in 2016. So I can get the citations if you need it, but it's better to do it positively than than use it as a hammer, right? A lot of benefits for that.
Frank, somebody in the chat asked, what is the Mid-Atlantic? Can you give us a quick?
Absolutely. So good. That was probably Annabelle. No, it's fine. Thanks, Mom. Yes, the Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation. So the history of that is that each annual conference has a local foundation to help them with investments in stewardship. So the Eastern Pennsylvania and Pendel Conference merged in 2010 with the Baltimore Washington Foundation, and their infinite wisdom, that's actually when they hired me on board after it passed the, so in their wisdom or lack of, I don't know, but in 2010. So since 2010, it's been merged, and thus the name Mid-Atlantic United Methodist Foundation. But it is a separate 501c3 that is the local foundation for all three of the annual conferences with a self-perpetuating board. But we're here to help out with stewardship like tonight. A lot of great programs, and this great Financial Leadership Academy that has 93 pastors and coaches and stuff too, that we just want to help our churches to have more resources to make more disciples. So that's what we're here to help them do that in the right way and the cleanest way possible. And you saw the quality of the presentation tonight. It was fantastic, and some really good. I always learn something each time I hear Karen and Carrie. So we're here to help you. Please call us. We're happy to help out anytime, and I'll be sending everybody an email afterwards. I know Annabelle and I have been working on that, and we'll do a follow-up. This actually was recorded, as we said, so we'll send you a copy of the recording and also the slides. You can use the slides later too, so if people missed it. But we're here to help. So
Great, thank you, Frank. One final question, and then we'll go to Reverend Green for prayer, if that's okay. Just the final question says, I thought I heard there's a threshold for the audit team exchange. If this is accurate, do you know what that threshold is?
If your annual budget is $500,000 or less, you do not have to have a certified, CPA to come in and do your audit. And so that is the threshold. And then if you are between 500,000 and $1 million, some cases you have to get an audit once a year, and then the other year you can use a volunteer audit committee. But again, the threshold for without having to have a certified CPA is $500,000 or less for your annual budget.
But we would recommend as best practice that you conduct your own audit regardless. I believe.
Yes.
that's good.
Great.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
We're at 8:35. I just want to thank everybody, JW and Jerry. This is great. Good turnout. Thank you so much for allowing us to do this. Annabelle, always your help is fantastic. Carrie, Roll Tide, but they're rolling too much right now. Yes, he actually was recruited to Alabama as a running back, ended up being an engineer. So we're blessed to have him in the church. And Karen, as always, your leadership fantastic. So thank you guys so much. Last thoughts, Karen, before we let Reverend Jerry pray us out? Nope. She's good. I think she's good. Okay. Jerry, would you pray us out, please?
Surely. I also wanted to thank you, Frank, for all that you've done.
Thank you.
To help pull this together. So why don't we close with a word of prayer? Creator God, we're thankful for the opportunity to gather this evening and for the wealth of information that has been shared. We're especially thankful for the technology and the persons that facilitated this webinar. We're mindful, gracious God, that you have blessed us in a multitude of ways. And as a people of faith, we are ever mindful that we have been blessed to be a blessing. We're thankful for this presentation that has taught us how to be better stewards of our financial resources. And as we prepare to depart from this gathering, we pray that you will not depart from us. We pray that the fullness of your grace will remain with us through the challenges of this week. May we be willing to also share that grace with our neighbors. We pray for a peaceful night's rest and that we might arise refreshed, ready to engage in using our resources to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. This we pray in your holy name. Amen.
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 Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, everyone.